Hi, I'm Nancy with Stony Creek Yarn, and you're watching Along Stony Creek. Hi, welcome back to Stony Creek Yarn. Along Stony Creek, my knitting, crocheting, and yarn dyeing podcast along Stony Creek, north of Monroe, Michigan, 28 miles north of Toledo, 28 miles south of Detroit, and 28 miles southeast of my 2 adult children who live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I have 4 adult children, but 2 live in Ann Arbor. And I miss them terribly all the time. And I'm saying that as I'm literally starting to pack my number 4, almost 19-year-old one up to move to a group home. My 2 youngest children are on the autism spectrum, and they're in a program to help them be independent. And I want them to be independent, and yet 18 and 20, I'm having some trauma. Almost 19, but I'm having some trauma. Anyway, I think that's a mom thing. I am enjoying a refreshing Diet Coke today in the 75-degree and smoky air of Michigan because of the fires in Quebec, Canada. And I'm sick about it. We're not used to this. Certainly New York's not used to this. Certainly Canada's not used to this. On the eastern edge of the eastern part of their country, wildfires are usually in the west. So this is a whole new paradigm for all of us. I can't dry my yarn outside. I have to use the garage and my dehumidifiers. I love to dye yarn outside in the sunshine. Dry, not dye, dry yarn outside in the sunshine. I can't go and take my yarn out there because it will smell like a forest fire, and that's not a goal I have for my yarn. So I've got some administrative work, and then it's fear of sweater knitting today. I think it's a great topic. I think it's fun. I think we should dive into it. I think we should talk about what scared me when I started to knit my first sweater, because it might scare you, or it might bring back memories of, yeah, that's exactly how I felt when I was knitting my first sweater. Let's have some nostalgia. So get your cozy on or your cool. And as you can see, 4 to 5 Great Lakes prefer Michigan. And let's rock and roll this. Okay. The first part of administration for me is announcing the winners of last month's contest, which I planned to do before now, but I have filmed this podcast 4 times, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. But then something really good happened, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. All right. I'll put this back out in the dye studio, and then I'll get the top later afterwards. The dye studio, by the way, this is the dye studio, my 800 square foot heated garage. And this is a sheep painting that I got from the internet, Etsy. It's Dean Corser. I will actually link him in the comments. Not paid, not sponsored, not nothing. Just love his work. Love his work. Okay, so last month's contest had 2 winners, and I'm never going to 2 winner again, because picking out the winner is, and then deciding who's getting what and how to do it fairly is very difficult. So I've decided the best way to do it is I'm going to announce both winners in no particular order, and whoever gets back to me first gets their choice, and the other person gets the other thing, which is still really cool. All right. So my first prize, not my first prize, one of the prizes was the Cherry Blossom Rain colorway and the Crystal Pink for a sock set. The other was Bonfire and Cast Iron, and my cast iron just came unwound. That's so frustrating. I like it to look pretty at all times. I really like my yarn to look really pretty and neat. I bought a skein twister for a reason. I like my nice, neat skeins. I bought a skein twister to save my arms. And if you're a dyer, your first and best thing is your spin dryer. Your second best thing is your skeiner or reskeiner. And your third and best thing is a skein twister. So invest in that order if you're a yarn dyer, in my opinion. The first winner, and again, it's whoever gets back to me first gets to choose. I need to make that very clear. Is Brooke Chauvelin 5956. She commented on the first video I made. It's spelled BRROOKE BROOKSCSHOEVLIN 5956. It will be on the screen here. If you see it, that's your name. That's you. Contact me. Nancy at stonycreekyarn.com. It's in the more bar. It's up to you to contact me. If you haven't contacted me by the next drawing, which will be the 3rd of July, I will move on to another possible winner. The other winner is Salter Pervesklan 1199, SALTER dash PURVELSCLAN plan 1199. Whoever gets back to me first gets their choice. Both of you, just tell me what you want. Maybe everything will be perfect. And if not, we'll work it out then. Now let's talk next month's prize, which we drawn. It's the comments for the month of June. If you comment on one of my videos, you talk about what you like about knitting or crocheting, or something you found that's really cool, or a pattern you love, which is a perfect comment for today, you could win Roller Rink. Roller Rink is a 2-ply merino nylon, 80% merino, 20% nylon, classic sock base in bright colors that flash through with greens and oranges and pinks in the most fun way. It also comes with a mini skein. All of my mini skeins are drying in the dye room right now. I have a bunch of different colors. You can pick your mini skein, black light fluorescent color, and many of these colors are black light fluorescent, so that's kind of cool. So all you have to do to win this is leave a comment in any of the videos I make between now and July 3rd. I guarantee you I won't be putting up a video on July 3rd. It'll be before that. The next thing is to talk about, I want to quickly mention what's going to be new in the shop this week. I know. But, you know, shameless self-promotion is a beautiful thing, okay? I have 2 new colorways and one that works really well with both of them. The first one is Poplar. We've had a lot of poplar fuzz lately, and for some reason this mix of colors reminded me of poplar fuzz and poplar trees. I used to explain it in depth about how exactly I got to that looking like that thing to me. The truth is, it's all interpretation. I interpret this as a poplar colorway. I interpret it. And this is Misty Lake. Again, no reason. It just, when I rescanned it, I'm like, ah, Misty Lake. These are available on both my merino fingering, which is 2-ply 100% merino, and my classic sock, which is 80% merino, 20% nylon, 2-ply yarn. It'll be available in both my Etsy shop and stonycreekyarn.com. They both go really, really well with Silver Sage, which I have a bunch of and will try to get up by Saturday morning because they go together well. These, by the way, are reskeined. The unreskeined versions, for those of you who love looking at unreskeined yarn, because I know I do, Poplar and Misty Lake. I think they're really pretty, and they're very, 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 very organic. I was looking for words to describe my dye style, because I have a definite dye style. I don't like jarring notes of color in with other colors. I'm very natural looking. Obviously, I don't dye with natural dyes because I don't. And there's lots of reasons for that. It's just you choose what you love. I love acid dyes. And organic. I like my colors to feel natural. And even though, yeah, so natural. It's natural for my roller rink, which is just up the street. Really, I live very close to Dixie Skateland, which is a roller rink built in the 60s, and I do go there. I have rollerblades just for Dixie Skateland. My roller skates are for the ground outside. My rollerblades are for Dixie Skateland. And I'm a terrible rollerblader, roller skater. I just do it because it's fun. I am going to grab the top of this with my feet because I have freakishly long toes, which is something you did not need to know. But hey, you learn something new every day. And I'm going to cover it because I do not want cat or dog in my yarn that I'm going to sell. There's tons of cat and dog in the yarn that I knit every single day. I mentioned that I live in Monroe, Michigan. I live in Monroe, Michigan, north of Monroe in the beach communities with 2 of my 4 children, Gerald and Hearn. Jean and Zach live in Ann Arbor, as I said. I have a dog, Zool, who's a golden doodle. I have 2 cats, Kit Kit and Hopeless Case. Hope. She's just a hopelessly wonderful, hopeless case. She spent the first 6 months of her life in a cage without enough human companionship. So she's a very kind of a cat she's a cat's cat. She does cat things with other cats, not so much with humans, and that's fine. I just love her to death. And I have 3 rats, which I won't show you because people get squicked out by rats. Pip, Pop, and Bear, all named after the bear in the Big Blue House television series, which was on when my kids were little, and I loved, and they found like not that interesting. Before I go any further, my local yarn shop, it's inside Erie Mercantile. It's called Nitpicky and Hooked. I did it. I didn't think I'd get the name right. It's owned by a woman named Laura. And they have stickers she's been making. And I've been buying the stickers like crazy because I think they are so incredibly cute. You know, the Mark Twain, the more I learn about people, the more I like my dog quote, Andy Warhol. I think everyone should be nice to everyone, which I can't agree with more. I have my Peace, Love, Knit, my knitting, my ball of yarn, and my 2 needles, a heart, a rainbow heart, especially good in June, I think. Not now, I'm counting. This is going on one of my, the back of my clipboard. They have a bunch more too. I'm going crazy. And just 1 more row. They have all of these adorable stickers that the lady that owns the yarn shop makes. And she does quilting stuff too, because they have quilting. Lake Erie Mercantile specializes in quilting. Nitpicky and Hooked specialize in crochet and knitting. And they are very even about the crocheting and the knitting love. They are very good about making sure that the crocheters are super taken care of. And not all yarn stores do that, which I appreciate. And I'm a little bit hepped up on them right now because when I met Laura last night, who owns Nitpicky and Hooked, she would like to see my yarn next Thursday. So fingers crossed. They're doing a yarn crawl. There's one in June and one in July and one in August. The July yarn crawl, they want a special skein that is Christmas in July, and I have some ideas. I have some ideas around Bob and Doug McKenzie's Christmas beer song. On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a beer in a tree, and I thought about using a Michigan beer label. I think that's what I'm going to do. I came home last night and that's immediately what I wanted to do. And then the other one is road trips. And I am looking at the Leelanau Peninsula and M22, which is one of the most scenic drives in the country. If you ever get to Michigan, it's all the way up here in the Leelanau Peninsula. Absolutely worth it to fly to Traverse City to rent a car in the fall or the late summer or really, I've been up there a lot. It's just one of the most stunning drives. You get on these huge sand dunes and you come down, and Lake Michigan is off, depending which way you're driving, north or south, which you're right or you're left. I'm usually headed north, which is why I'm doing this. And there's Lake Michigan and interior dunes, fore dunes, and back dunes. And you get to see the whole, how dunes move and evolve. It is really, I'm not the only one who thinks so. If you look at best drives in the country, it's always right near the top. That and was Highway 1 in California and a few others. Okay, so today I thought we would go over anxiety and knitting, and specifically nervousness about knitting a sweater. Now, whether you're nervous or anxious about knitting a sweater depends on how afraid you are to knit a sweater. And maybe you've knit a sweater before and it just didn't come out the way you wanted it to, or maybe you knit your first sweater 100 sweaters ago. This is going to be a good reminder of the kinds of anxiety you might go through when you're about to knit a sweater, because this is what I went through. I have knit three t-shirts, 2 ranunculi, and 2 holly sweaters. So I'm a new sweater knitter. So the memories of the fear are right here. Okay, right here. And I am no, I mean, oh, it needs sweater expert. Oh, I did want to show you what I was working on and what I finished. I have a friend who's a dad, and I knit him a Father's Day hat. He likes his hats close to his head with a brim you can roll up and no pom-pom. So that is exactly what he's getting. And it's exactly perfect for everything that he loves. It's very squishy. I did a 1x1 rib, and I just decreased at the crown, trying to keep the knits and purls in the same configuration, but not always succeeding. And I am loving it. The only question I have is, I want something decorative. I kind of want to put a button here, because I know he's gonna wear it rolled up every single time. So I'm thinking the button might be cute if it was the right button. I'm going to go look at my button stash, which is extensive, this afternoon, because I have 2 whole days till Father's Day. I am working now on I did not bring my sock out, which is actually at the point, the first sock I was at, my first 4-carrier sock is at the point of the ribbing. But I haven't, because I was knitting that hat, and it took me longer than I thought because I was dying a lot. Jacquard has some new dyes that are fluorescent in their black light. I may have bought 3 and done experimenting the last few days. This is my turquoise Cumulus sweater, knit on size 4 needles just to get a little bit more drape. And of course, I am not meeting gauge, but I am measuring, trying on, which is the key. If you don't want to watch any more of this video, the key to knitting a sweater is top down, in the round, measure, try on with barber cord. Now you know everything you need to knit a sweater. Like, literally, that's the most important part. But there's more. The other thing I'm knitting is, I have so many. When I dye a new colorway, I make a mini, and then I knit a sample out of it, and then I have the rest of that left over, which is like 15 grams of yarn. So I decided to riff on a paid-for pattern that I paid for, so I can't talk about it too much. It's done in stockinette. I'm knitting it in garter because I want this to be very warm and squanchy this winter, and I'm going to be using as many skeins as I can. Then after I finish this one, I'll probably move on to another one. Oh, I did talk about last time the woman who made these bags, turns out the owner of Knit Picky and Hooked, and she doesn't have a pattern for it, but she said, I'm going to draw it up for you and maybe we can work something out. So I'm thinking, for a skein of yarn, I can make as many of these little bags as I want to. That would be fair for price for a pattern, I do believe, especially one that I use so much. And not to sell, because I will never sew to sell. And that's not a Knockwood thing. That is, I will never sew to sell. All right, let's talk about your anxiety about a sweater. I mean, there's all of this, what if I knit through sleeves? What if I cut it off right under the boobs? What if I don't cover my boobs with a sweater? This is for women. What if I start knitting and I really get involved watching a television show and it becomes a tunic? What if I knit an extra hole in the back. These are ridiculous things, obviously. But there are some real nervous-making things by knitting a sweater, and I want to talk about those. I have my notes right in front of me. And the sweaters, I have sweaters I'm going to reference today. I'm going to reference my ranunculus, and I'm going to mostly speak about these are for your first sweater. I strongly suggest top-down knitted in the round because you can try on, try on, try on. You can do bottom up later. There's plenty of sweaters. This is my ranunculus. It is a yoked sweater. The increases go all the way across the yoke before you split for the sleeves. This is my holly with the boobly bobbly. I'm going to call it my boobly bobbly holly sweater. And this is a raglan increase, and the increases are along the sides of the arms to make before you split for the sleeves. So these are the two kinds of sweaters I'm going to talk about. I'm also going to talk about a reference sweater. This is a sweater you have in your closet that you like, that fits you right, that you love the shape of. Find it. If you don't have one, we'll talk about what you do in a little bit. So this is my reference sweater. It's just an acrylic, fast fashion. I wear it a lot, and I take very good care of it because I love it so much. Eventually, I have to knit one for myself. Okay, so fear number one. Nancy, knitting a sweater is really, really hard. Except it's not. It's like reading the Harry Potter series. All of those books. Reading a Tolkien series. All those books. Chronicles of Narnia. You get where now you know the kinds of books I read in my spare time. Fantasy. And romance. It's like reading the Bridgerton series. There are so many books. Well, you're not reading the entire series all at once. In fact, Bridgerton's really good to talk about because I'm ready for Penelope's story. I happen to love those books, and I love the show. Love the show. Realistic? Not on any level. They did not treat Black people like that. Okay, let's be honest. It was awful, but fascinating. I love it. I love it. You're not reading all the stories at once. You're not reading Anthony and Penelope. But I can't remember all the Bridgerton names right now. I'm drawing an absolute blank. Especially Charlotte. You're not reading all of them at the same time. Charlotte, yes. You're reading them one word, one sentence, one paragraph, one chapter, one book at a time. That's how you have to digest it. The same goes for knitting anything. You're going one row, one stitch, one area before you separate for sleeves, after you separate for sleeves, and the two sleeves. When you're looking at it like that, you're not looking at the whole elephant. You're looking at this much of the elephant, and this much of the elephant, and this much of the elephant. And once your brain puts together those pieces of the elephant, it can make an entire elephant. And that's how the sweater is going to go. Literally, one nibble at a time, one thing to look at a time. And then before you know it, sweaterishness. The most complicated thing, if you're not doing color work and cables, and I am not saying your first sweater should not have color work, nor should it have cables in it. If you are the color work queen or king or person of hats and mittens and shawls and scarves and everything else, all the things, then you can do a color work sweater the first time. Pick an easy one, but you can't top down in the round. If you cable everything, if you dream of cables on all of your socks, there are some sick people that do that. Jeez, you're not sick. I'm the sick one for not wanting to cable socks. I'm too chicken. I'm chicken they'll be too tight. That's what I'm chicken of. Chicken. Anxiety about knitting. Imagine that. I never talk about that. Then you should cable your sweater. You should have some cables, some basic cables on your sweater. If that keeps you engaged and interested, and that's what you love to knit, and you don't want to knit anything plain in the round, do that. But for most knitters, your first sweater is going to be one color in the round, top down. That's the simplest kind of sweater to make. So then it's not hard. It's not difficult. It's not intimidating. It's just a cast on, knit this way, knit these stitches that way. In my case, I short rows. Maybe some yarn overs. Holly's a good sweater to start with. I have a bunch, by the way. And I have a video that I've already filmed that'll be coming out after this about how I look for easy sweaters on Ravelry, if you're interested in that. I also have a sweater bundle, and if you have suggestions to add to it for easy sweaters to start with, I would be eternally grateful. I really do love the interaction and the help here. It's just cast on, you knit with a few yarn overs, then you put your sleeves on some string, then you cast on a few stitches with a backward loop cast on, and you keep going. The hardest thing after that is picking up the stitches. That's it. Picking up stitches. You can do that. You can. You probably have already done it if you're a knitter. If you can pick up stitches and knit in the round, you're golden on a sweater. All right, fine. It's not that hard. But Nancy, do you know how many skeins of yarn a sweater takes? Yes. Yes, I do. 4 to 9. The larger sizes can take up to 9. And these are 100-gram skeins. These are not the 50-gram skeins. This is 100-gram skeins. And it's a mountain of yarn. It is I can't. That sounded more like the beginning of the Star Wars. That sounded like, oh, way, oh, way, oh. That's not what I mean by that. It's not Star Wars. It looks like the mountain on The Price is Right, or the little guy goes up the mountain, only it's yarn. And it's overwhelming. It's in a bag. It's on your floor. You're staring at it. Maybe you've decided to get really smart and cake it all up and put it in a big old bag. That will make you feel like it is an eternal, eternal, eternal thing. That much yarn is intimidating. And what if you start knitting it and you hate it? Hate the yarn, hate the pattern, hate the whole thing. You've caked up the yarn. You can't return it. I would purchase my yarn at a place that allows unknit yarn that has not been damaged, and lots of indie dyers do this too, not just stores, to be returned, either for a store credit or your money back. I do store credit. So does my local yarn shop. Some places do your money back, just as long as you have a way to return it if you absolutely hate the project. Chances are you're not going to, but when you're looking at that much yarn, don't look at it all at once. What you're going to do is, if it's a commercial yarn with a dye lot, and it's the same dye lot, just get all the same dye lot. You put one skein of yarn, your stitch markers, your needles, and your pattern in a bag, and that's it. That's all. That's all she wrote. If you're helical knitting because you're doing indie dyer, 2 skeins. But that's it. That's all she wrote. That's all you're putting in that bag at a time to look at. That's it. That way you're not looking at a mountain of yarn. Keep your mountain in a closed, sealed container. No dust, no fur, no nothing like that. And keep it someplace safe that's close to where you like to knit. First, my hall closet is a good place. I have a big basket in my hall closet of yarn that goes with projects that I don't have in the bags because I get intimidated by that much yarn. I get very concerned about, well, so how much money that is and how much work that is. And I haven't done that much work yet. And it's so much to do. can't handle that. So I put it in the closet, and I bring it out of the closet as I can handle the reality of the next skein. And you can helical knit in the indie dyed yarn, and there are plenty. If you type in helical knitting, in fact, Roxanne Richardson has a great. I will link Roxanne Richardson. Great tutorial on helical knitting, I believe. If it's not her, it's Fairy Pink Knits. I will make both of those ladies. If you haven't found them, you probably have found them. If you haven't, thank you, and you're welcome. It's if you're knitting with indie dyed yarn, because of the way we'd have to dye the yarn, my steam pans hold 3 skeins at a time for dyeing a semi-solid or tonal. So anything more than 3 and you're going to get changes. And even in the same pan, you can have some differences. It's not done commercially. It's done independently, which is beautiful, and it's art. And if you let your indie dyer know that you're knitting a sweater, they will probably go through and pick out, the closest skeins. But they're still going to be sisters, not twins. Twins are anything by Lion Brand, anything by Cascade, anything by Garden Strop Studio, anything by Knit Picks. Those are your commercial skeins, and those should be the same dye lot. And if you're ordering online, make sure you leave a note that they should be the same dye lot. But put it away. Don't freak out. It's there when you need it. You don't need to be staring at it. I mean, really, especially late at night when you're knitting and you're just about to put your knitting down for the day and you look at that ginormous pile of yarn, you just want to rip that sucker back and throw it in the garbage and go to sleep. Don't do that to yourself. Well, that's fine. I can deal with the yarn now. I can put it away, and it's not that hard. I can do it. But I've never knit a sweater before, Nancy. It's not going to be perfect. Well, for some of you, it will be perfect because you are the knitters that I aspire to be and will never be because of my ADHD. Everything is done and you rip back perfectly, and you are, right there with every mistake you're making, so you can fix that mistake in real time. I'm not that person. Obviously, we've discussed the boobly bobbly on my mistake on my Holly sweater more than once. By the way, duplicate stitched it. Thanks, you person who suggested that. I don't remember who you are right now. I should look you up. I was kind of hoping you were going to win the comment contest. When you didn't, I was a little bit bummed. Make another comment so we can win another time, okay? I can live with this mistake. I wore this sweater to a Toledo Mud Hens game a couple weeks ago, and nobody said anything about the mistake. But somebody did say, "Did you knit that sweater?" Yes. "Where'd you get your yarn?" "Oh, I'm a yarn dyer. My partner's a knitwear designer. Are you interested in working with them?" "Why, yes. Here's my card." Good things can happen when you wear a sweater that you knit yourself, even if it's not perfect. This one isn't perfect. I don't know where the mistake is, although it may be where the Velcro just touched the side of my sweater from now on. And it needs to be blocked again. It really does. But there's a small mistake in my ranunculus, but I don't know where. By the way, my ranunculus Midori Hirose, Holly Uncastrick. Links again, as always. It's not going to be perfect. But as you're knitting along and you make a mistake, and you realize it's 4 rows back, is it worth ripping back? Can you live with it? Is it just an extra yarn over? Can you deal with the mistake, or is that going to haunt you to the point where you can't finish the sweater? Now, I know that not going back and fixing this was a terrible mistake, because if I wanted to rip back now, I am ripping back to the, honestly, I don't think I'd even split for sleeves at that point. And I'm not going to do that. All right. I'm just going to wear it when I wear it, as I wear it. Let anybody look at the boobly bobbly that they so desire to look at it. I can live with that mistake. If it really, really bugged me, I would have ripped it back during the process of knitting it. I'd like to think. Probably not. Depends how bad the mistake is. It's not going to be perfect. Your first sweater is not going to be your best sweater, but it will be a wonderful sweater, and you will love it, and you will cherish it, and you'll wear it, because I'm going to give you some tips on picking the perfect pattern and the perfect yarn. So hang in there. It's coming. Okay, fine. It's not going to be perfect. I can live with imperfection. I can live with a little difficulty of like picking up some stitches. I can handle a huge amount of yarn, but it's going to take forever, which is the reason I didn't knit, the main reason I did not knit a sweater. I was so afraid it was going to take forever, and it didn't. I knit my ranunculus, which is not gauge swatch, knit on size 10 needles, 10. And I was going to say 10 and a half, but 10. Although if I was going to knit this in worsted, I would probably go up to 10 and a half and just go with the extra large of it all. This was knit on a road trip. I was not driving because I can't knit and drive at the same time. Imagine that. To Washington, D.C., which is about 7.5 hours from here. And then in the evenings when I was there, I knit this in less than a week. Now, I had lots of time to put in on it. 14 hours of car riding is a lot of sweater knitting. And I looked at all of the interesting sites, but I've been to Washington, D.C. by car many times now, so I was not enamored of the sites as I used to be. So I could concentrate on knitting. And I don't need to look when I knit. That's just time. Time does that. This my Holly sweater probably took me 2 weeks when I had some downtime and my garage was too cold to dye yarn. And when it gets below 0 out there, the heater in the garage works, but then the cost of heating the garage becomes more than I want to spend. The gas bill just goes through the roof. At that point, I just keep the house warm and I dye in the house if I have to dye something up. But I have other things I can do administratively. So I'm not dyeing every day anyway. Another time as I dye is in breaks from work. When I'm not knit is breaks from work. If I am taking a break because I'm waiting for a color to strike, that's a half an hour I can knit. Doesn't take that long. You can do it. There's a couple of ways to make it seem a little shorter. Have goals, mini goals, not big goals. Your big goal is to finish the sweater, to finish the body, to separate for the sleeves, to finish the arms. Those are big goals. And you can have dates for big goals. I do. I always have a date listed for the big goals. My turquoise sweater, I separated for sleeves a week early, but since I didn't work on it this week, I'm actually a little bit behind. It was a hat. And, an inch a day. This is where Progress Keeper comes in handy. You just clip that thing up there in the morning. You set your knitting down where you can find it. You sit down a few times during the day. Natalie, Nitty Natty from Love and Stitches, whose podcast is amazing. And if you're not watching it, you should be. I will link her. She says a half an hour a day gets the job done. And I found if I have a project that I'm not particularly enthused about, but I spend a half an hour a day on it, it gets done faster. It just gets done. It gets done. And then I put my inch and a half an hour. I can put an inch and a half in a sweater easily. And I am not a particularly fast knitter by any stretch of the imagination. I am not. So it won't take forever. It can take a month. It can take 2 months. Especially complicated sweaters can take 3 or 4 months. But you're working on it a little bit every day, and you're not doing an especially complicated sweater right now. You're not doing an impossible sweater. You're just doing a sweater. All right, fine. I can take 3 weeks into the sweater. and all the other things, but it's so expensive. Yeah. You're looking at 4 to 9 skeins of yarn. And if you're looking at something like, and my prices are low compared to other people right now because I'm keeping it back because of the recession. I want people to be able to knit with hand-dyed yarn. And if it's $3 makes a difference, I want them to save the $3. So right now my merino cashmere nylon is $34 a 100 gram skein. And that times 10 is $340 if you get 10 skeins for some reason. Don't do that to yourself. You don't have to knit your first sweater out of independently dyed yarn. It's lovely, and we of course love it, but in reality, you're going to do better if you get a blend. And I don't think you should go with cotton or silk, 100% each of those, because then you'll make the sweater that magically grows. And heaven forbid you get caught in a rainstorm, because you're going to go from sweater to tunic to full-length ball gown before you know it. And then you got to dry it, and not for the first sweater. Plus, there's a lack of give in cotton and silk. Acrylic can be hot and uncomfortable. Acrylic mixed with wool is a really good first sweater. My local yarn store has skeins of, and I didn't even see what it was. I probably should have looked. I'll look next Thursday and I'll stick it up in next week's podcast, I promise. That are 50 grams, that are $6 each. They're 50% wool, 50% acrylic. That is a great, I'm going to sneeze. I sneezed. That is a great deal because you have the give of wool, the inexpensiveness of acrylic. Now, if you're absolutely against acrylic, you can get decently, reasonably priced yarn if you're willing to work with non-superwash yarn. I'm very sensitive to wool, so I knit with superwash yarn. But if you're willing to knit with non-superwash yarn, or the sweater's not going to be against your body, I have a hand knit Norwegian sweater that my mother brought back in the 1970s from Norway. Imagine the Norwegian sweaters from Norway that I wear, but I have a turtleneck and a shirt on underneath it. It is a jacket. It is not a sweater, like I would wear another kind of a sweater just over one thing. If you can handle non-superwash, it's going to save you a ton of money. If you want superwash, my ideas are Knit Picks. Amazon has a lot of yarn that is in bundles of 3 or 4 that is wool and acrylic. Just look up wool acrylic yarn, wool cotton yarn, a mixture, a blend with some kind of, I like wool. If you do not want to work with wool, other plant-based fibers work, but it's going to be a different knitting experience and a different blocking experience. If you prefer to knit with something like, well, yak's always good because yak, but it's expensive, but it's plucked from trees, not the animal. So that's, if you're vegan, that would be, I was vegan for a while, that would have been acceptable to me, although maybe not some vegans. I waffle. No more waffling. Okay. So I suggest some wool, a fiber like that, not all acrylic. Caron Simply Soft is a great yarn. I love it for lots of fun crochet projects and blankets and things that especially stuff I want to throw in the washing machine. I would not knit a sweater out of Caron Simply Soft. It just doesn't have the give, and it's splitty. The other thing is you want to make sure you don't have a yarn that's splitty. And there's ways to find out what a yarn is going to do on Ravelry, which I will go into in another video next week, how to find a better yarn. I don't know why I didn't think of that before. That's a good one. Okay, anyway. It's a good thing I checked that. I was going to do some dyeing on the stove this afternoon to test out some mini skein stuff because it's too hot to knit in the garage. Knit in the garage, dye yarn in the garage, in the dye studio. It's a garage, it's a dye studio. I don't use it for cars. I use it for my kids' boxes and my dye studio. The yarn does not have to price you out. Okay. So it's not so expensive. It can be so expensive. You can get, is it Kiviat? Vicuna? You can get Vicuna for $300 a skein, I think it is, or more than that, but for a sweater, and it pills. Just saying. All right, all this sounds okay, but I'm so nervous because I don't have anyone to knit with. I don't have a knitting buddy. You know, for the number of people that knit in this world that don't have knitting buddies, maybe they're introverts. I'm a little bit introverted. And that would shock most people that know me, but I really am. I get very nervous about doing things in new places with people. I feel awkward knitting in public, although I've learned to get over that. Just keep doing that, and you'll get over it fast. There are ways to find other people to knit with. My local yarn store has once a month, they have a crafters night, a makers night. They also, and that's kind of an event they have once a month, but they also just have drop-in knitting on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, anytime you want to just come in and knit. And there's usually somebody else sitting there, or the owner is there to talk about yarn because they own a yarn store because they like yarn. My local seniors group, which I will be eligible for in December, I'll be 60, has a knitting group. If you're my age or older, you have perhaps that to look forward to. Meetup is a great place to find other knitters. I've used Meetup for knitting groups more than once in my life. I have not found one locally since COVID, which probably means that I should step forward, talk to the library, get a space, and be the one that leads the Meetup group. That really is probably something I should do. If you're reliable, if you show up, and you know if you show up, or if you're like somebody that like, I mean, not tonight, you know that, and you want to start a knitting group, talk to your local library. Look on Meetup, see if there is one. If there's not, start your local group. You may be the only one that shows up, but eventually other people will show up, I promise. And a lot of libraries offer their rooms for free for things like that for the community. There are Meetup groups. There are groups that do Zoom knitting together. I haven't found any. I know other people who have. They're not open right now. If you know of an open Zoom group, let me know in the comments, and I will share that information with people, or I'll just be selfish and keep it to myself because I want to join one. You can find a friend that is long distance and just set up a video call. I do it over Wi-Fi with other subjects all the time. It's easy peasy. It's almost like having a meal with them. I am amazed at how far technology has come since I was born in 1963, and I am delighted with how far technology has come. So you can find people to knit with. If you just have questions about what to do, I've got your back. Roxanne Richardson has a great channel, and she has a really good tutorial on closing that gap under sleeves that sweaters get. And Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. She owns a yarn store. I think it's in North Carolina. I'll leave a link. And she is fabulous. She does a whole tutorial series on the ranunculus without giving away the pattern, because my Midori Hirose has a whole video series on how to knit the ranunculus. There are no words, and I need at least English or French. I speak enough French to understand it. Mostly English words to get things cemented in my brain. I can look all day, but I have to hear as well as see. I am an oral learner. And she does a fabulous ranunculus, but then she went on and did a basic sweater construction whiteboard explanation that is so perfect. I'm not going to do that. I don't need to. She's already done it. You don't need me to do it. So there is expert advice out there. There's also pattern support, and there are people you can knit with, even if you're just knitting while you're watching YouTube podcasts. The Grocery Girls came out yesterday. I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to knit my sweater with them this afternoon. okay, fine, but it's too complicated to figure out what I want to make. You know how many sweater patterns are on Ravelry, Nancy? Yeah, I do. Thousands and thousands and thousands. So this is where I have a couple tips for you. The first one is the video it's coming up next is about the Ravelry search function and how to look for easy sweaters. But the second set of tips is going to be to either go into your winter wardrobe. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you're looking at it. And if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's probably put away somewhere. Pull out something. This is the only sweater I have out this time of year that I like that's commercial, that fits me well. It's a drop shoulder design, which I don't suggest for your first sweater because there's a lot of back and forth knitting. But what I like about this and works is the measurements and the way it fits my body, the way it isn't too tight, it isn't too loose, it is my Goldilocks sweater. And because it's my Goldilocks sweater, I took the measurements at the front, I took the measurements at the back, I measured the sleeves. Now this is a drop shoulder, it's different with raglan, we'll talk about that in a second. I looked at the neck. I'm obviously not going to knit the button bands, but so I turned the neck in and I said, okay, crew neck works, turtleneck works. The same shape would work with a ballet neck. So these are my basic sweater measurements. If you don't have any sweaters out, or you, for some reason, don't have any sweaters, let's say you just downsized because you decided to knit all the things, what I would suggest you do is if your local thrift store has a mirror and you can go and just try on sweaters and see what shapes fit you best and look best on your body. If your local store in August, stores will start putting out sweaters for fall and winter. Way too early, but hey, it is what it is. You can go into a store, take your camera, take a measuring tape. They will never look at you twice with a measuring tape in a thrift store. Trust me on that one. And you're going to measure things. You're going to look at it. If you're looking at a raglan sweater, this is a raglan sweater, and you love the way it fits you from here to here. This is the raglan increase line. Measure from the neck to here. Make a little drawing if you have to. Take pictures of the sweater on and off your body. Measure on and off your body. Make notes about the measurements. Don't feel weird about it. Don't feel strange about it. I like to go to Kohl's because they don't bug me. Just saying. If I go to a fancy store and somebody's trying to sell me stuff all the time, I don't want salespeople. I want to look at sweaters. Now, I would probably end up buying a sweater because I am a magpie. And I see things and I love them, and that is it. Total magpie. Which is why I have too many clothes, but I downsize that frequently. So if you do feel like you're going to be wasting time, go when you're planning to buy something else. Go to Macy's when you're planning to buy a skirt. Try on your skirts and then try on a ton of sweaters with your skirt. And find your clothing that you want. And there's nothing wrong with going in a store and not buying something. I think people get very intimidated. They feel like they have to. As long as you're not trying everything on and throwing it all over the dressing room and keeping it neat and tidy, you can do that. It's okay. I've worked in retail. It's all right. So this particular shape works well on my body. The particular ease of this, it is positive ease, but it is not so much positive ease. It looks like a maternity sweater. The positive ease I can handle is my ranunculus. I could wear a boxy, obviously. I would wear a Joji Locatelli's boxy. I have the pattern. I bought it because I love the look of it on other people. But when I tried on a boxy style sweater a couple of years ago, I realized that it's great on other people, and I'm really glad I spent the money for Joji, and because she's a great designer and deserves it. And if you own sweater patterns and you can't make one work, there is no shame in buying the right sweater pattern. Now, you can knit a sweater for a child for your first sweater, and that can make it easier. But for little kids, I like to knit cardigans. I would like to knit. I would like to knit cardigans. I have not. I don't have anyone with little kids right now, although my grandniece is going to have a baby, so I'll have a great grandniece. So that's an excuse to knit a sweater. And they're very knit worthy. You should probably knit it for yourself. This is going to be something that isn't imperfect. Not that you don't deserve perfection, because you certainly do, but this is for you to love. So I do suggest the trying on, the measuring. And then as you knit your sweater, top down, measure, measure, measure. If you have the sweater that is your, let's say I'm basing my next sweater off the measurements in this sweater, hold them up together, realizing one's not blocked, stretch out a little bit, or block it and look at it. You get barber cord, try on, try on, try on, and measure, 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 measure. And your sweater will fit you beautifully because you will know what you have to do. Also, in the notes of knowing what you have to do, don't do what I did the first time. I did not go through and highlight my size for the number of stitches, and I got confused. Don't do that. Have your size worked out ahead of time and mark it down. Well, okay. What if you hate it? What if you knit this sweater and you absolutely hate it? First of all, that's one of the reasons I told you not to cake up all your yarn. If you're knitting along and it's the wrong yarn for the wrong project, and you know it, and this happens to you, I will start to knit something and be like, not the right project for this yarn. Undo, undo, undo. There's no shame or shade in that. Because you want things that you absolutely are going to 100% love. So worrying about whether you're going to hate this sweater is a real concern. But if you try on sweaters, you know what you like, you know what you look good in. When you do your search, you look for those shapes. You go with a color. Go to your closet and squint your eyes. Now, in the summer, I go boho, and I go all out boho with the long draggy skirts and the whole bit. And in the winter, it's classic, basic, neutral colors. If that's you, knit something that goes with those neutral colors. If you wear jeans and you wear black pants all the time, then you can put any color you want on the upper half of your body that makes you happy. If you're going to wear it with a specific something or other, make it match that. You'll be guaranteed to wear it that way. Oh, I made this sweater to go with this. I'm wearing this today. I have to wear the sweater. And you will wear your sweater. And then you will learn to love your sweater as you wear it, as it becomes more part of your wardrobe, as you become comfortable with your little mistake or whatever is bugging you. It will be something you like. You will fall in like with it at least. If you really, really hate it, you have two options. You can frog the whole thing back, and there's no shame in that. I frogged back a ranunculus when it was everything but the last bit of ribbing on this sleeve, because I realized that I don't like mohair against my skin. I like it in hats, I can wear it in gloves, I can wear it in socks, but any other part of my body, no hair, mohair. I love dyeing it, can't wear it. So I frogged it back. The other option is you can find a worthy person to gift it to. Usually there's someone in your life that says, I love your handed stuff. Can I have something sometime? That's your person. And they won't even notice your mistake. I am 100% sure, or that it's not perfect. I do suggest when you're looking for color, you don't knit your first sweater in super dark brown, super dark in black, or dark gray, navy, or dark, deep purple, or like a midnight dark blue. The stitches are harder to see. It's harder to see if you've dropped one. It is easy to drop one, especially if you're doing one of those things where you're doing other things while you're knitting. And they're hard to pick up. If you work with those colors exclusively now, be my guest. But for your first sweater, a lighter colored yarn is going to ensure more success. And after all, that's what this whole ridiculous list of 3-arm sweaters is about. You want this to be successful. You want to be able to wear it. You want people to walk up to you and say, I really like that sweater. I made it. You want to put it on in the morning, look in the mirror and say, your hair's not perfect. Your shoes don't really match your pants, but that sweater makes you look great. Right to yourself, literally. And it's not a terrible thing to tell yourself that you look good. It's okay to say, I look good. I mean, maybe you don't look good next to whatever hot actress is out there at the moment. You look great for you. And that's the best look you can have, is looking great as you can look. Don't try to be somebody else. It just doesn't work out very well. Take your time selecting your pattern. And this goes back to the what if I hate it. If you take your time, really take your time. What I do is I go through, and I use Ravelry exclusively to look for patterns, because if I don't, I lose the patterns. I've tried with Patternfish. I don't even know my password anymore. And it's an old email. I can't even get back into it. I can't get those patterns anymore. I got my Ravelry. I'm okay. I will read the description that the designer gives, and then I will go to the most helpful projects. Go to the project page, go to helpful, and in your search, and that's what I show you in the search in the next video. And you can read about how it fits, if it's fitting too tight, if it's fitting too loose. Can people not get gauge? Because you're going to have to gauge swatch unless you're knitting a ranunculus, and then you don't have to. That they tell you not to. It was so weird. I'm knitting the sweater, and all this stuff I've been told about gauge, which is very important. and I don't use it for one of my very first sweaters. It was just weird and odd. And then I keep my gauge swatch for the future, because if I need yarn to fix a problem, I have it. I can't remember which podcaster said that, but bless them. Bless them very much. I'm passing this knowledge to you without knowing where it came. If you know where it came, tell me so I can thank them personally. You want to read every helpful note you can. And this is not for every sweater you want to knit. This is, you pick out a couple or 3 that you're interested in, and you read. And you read how long it took people to finish the sweater. You're going to read if they put the dates in. You're going to read the notes. You're going to read any changes people made, why they made those changes, if those changes worked out for them. To get a really good pattern, I really believe you need to read the helpful notes, especially when you're dedicating as much time as you do to a sweater. And look at the pictures of the people wearing the sweater. Don't look, the black ones are pretty. That looks pretty. But look at people wearing the sweater. Don't look at the thinnest or the whatever model has the body that you wish you had. Be honest with yourself and look at somebody wearing a sweater who has the body you have, because they're out there. They're knitters, and they've put project notes up on Ravelry, and you can get a really good idea what that sweater is going to look like on you that way. But you have to be honest with yourself. I do not weigh 110 pounds. I weigh 140 pounds. So I need to look at sweaters that look good with people with slightly larger busts right now. I'm on a medication that makes me gain weight. I want off it because I want my old body back. Anyway, that's another story. So that's the stuff I was scared of when I was knitting my first sweater. Also, I had a nightmare of what I forgot to split for sleeves, and I put it on, and I was like this all day, and then I wore it, and I felt like a member of the Addams family. From the cartoon, Uncle Fester, mostly in a straitjacket. Don't do that. It's just a nightmare. Nothing like that is going to happen. It's just a little anxiety. If you can knit, if you've knit a shawl, if you've knit a hat, if you've knit around, you can absolutely knit a sweater you'll be very, very proud of. Maybe you'll knit one. Maybe you'll be like me and become completely addicted to sweater knitting and have a huge list of the things you want to knit. I am going from the piece of cake and beginner sweaters. I'm moving into more medium type sweaters, with the eventual idea I want to do drop sleeves and I want to do some set-in sleeves in the very near future. Before Christmas, I want to do 2 sweaters like that. And I have a cardigan on the list, which is I call typewriter knitting. It's back and forth, like I eat my corn. I typewriter my corn cob. It's an American thing. Maybe it's just a me thing. I do not know. You can make a sweater you love. It's not going to be as hard as you think it is. It's not going to take as long as you're afraid it's going to take, unless you're afraid it's going to take more than a week. Then you might be overreaching. Then you might be overreaching. Make sure your goals are achievable. Remember, it's one stitch, one row, one yarn over, one slip stitch, because I'm trying to think of what's the hardest part about the ranunculus. And it looks like it might be hard because there's so much lace, but if you've knit any lace at all, you can absolutely knit this. I really recommend this for a first sweater if you knit any lace. And look how tiny it is. It just packs up so small. There are some slip stitches. There are yarn overs, slip knits, knit 2 togethers, and a little bit of purling. That's how complicated this was. I mean, yarn overs, purling, an easy sweater to knit. I have, and I will link, a Ravelry bundle of sweaters that I think are great for first-time knitters. It is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination. It does mostly contain designers who design a lot of sweaters and have a lot of positive comments about their patterns, because in the case of knitting your first sweater, you should have a yarn dyer. I can't believe I was going to say yarn dyer. So many creative things you can do with string. Knitwear designers are going to have more easy to digest instructions, and the instructions will address more of the minutia, like don't go for a drops free pattern for your first sweater, or any of your sweaters for that matter, since they rip off actual designers. So I think of people like Petite Knit, Jared Flood, Amy Christopher, Uncle Stick, Heidi Kramer, Isabel Kramer. I could sit here and think and go through this list for days and days and days and days and days and days and days. Oh, the Tulsa Tea by Rebecca Clow from the Caribbean Knits podcast is like one of the best written patterns I've ever read, and that is going on my needles next, and I cannot wait. I have to knit a birthday hat first, so another hat knitting marathon. I actually have to dye the yarn for that first, and I have till the 16th. It's DK weight. I could put 2 DKs together, and I can knit it as bulky. In fact, that's actually a good idea. So those are my answers to your fears about knitting a sweater. Do you have fears that I didn't mention? Do some of my fears seem ridiculous? Like, are you really think you're going to knit a 3rd arm? What if you have 4 arms? How would you knit the sweater then? Easy split. If it's there this way, you split for sleeves twice. I'm Nancy with the Long Stony Creek and Stony Creek Yarn. Take care of yourself today, because you're your best friend, really. And you're the most important person in your life, really. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of everybody else. Thank you for watching, and knit a sweater and let me know what sweater you might want to knit for your first sweater, or maybe what is your ultimate goal sweater, and what sweater are you going to knit first to get to your ultimate goal sweater. My ultimate goal sweater is the milkweed cardigan by Carol Sunday. That's a tough looking sweater, but if I wait until I'm more comfortable with cables and do it one stitch at a time, I'll probably be able to do it next year. And so can you, with whatever sweater you want to knit. Thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me, and have a fabulous, it's Friday here, have a fabulous weekend.